Coming in at number 10 now, we have Ulrich. Ulrich is not just a fat cat, he is possibly the fattest cat. Ulrich belongs to Jan Mitchell from the UK, who took him on a pet fitness competition to try and help him lose weight. When they put him on the scales, he weighed in at 30 pounds. That's about the weight of a healthy toddler. He was put on a strict 6-month diet and exercise regime. Hopefully that worked out for him. I've not heard from him since. Next up at number 9 now, we have Zeus. Zeus is sadly no longer with us, but he's just too amazing to leave off this list. He was a 44-inch tall Great Dane from Michigan. He was the tallest dog in the world at one point. In fact, he's still the tallest dog ever. Despite being on all fours, he was taller than your average 5-year-old kid. Now, it's pretty much expected that a Great Dane will always be the tallest dog in the world because they are just generally huge, but even among Great Danes, Zeus was massive. Rest in peace, Zeus. Do you guys think his record will ever be beaten? Moving on to number 8 now, we have Gary. Gary is a capybara, and he's the world's largest pet rodent. These animals are normally found in the wild in South America, but Gary's owners got him from a breeder in the US. They did not expect him to get this big though. Gary weighs in at 112 pounds. That's about the weight of your average 14-year-old. That's right, Gary weighs more than some of you guys watching this video. Don't worry though, you're probably normal. Gary is definitely not normal.
At number 7, we have Zonkey. So if Henny wasn't wild enough for you here, for real life, have a Zonkey. A blend of a zebra and a donkey, and yeah, it's real. Quite rare though, because it's not as fertile of a species. Also because donkeys and zebras don't have the same number of chromosomes, so very rare. They look like their donkey parent in their physical stature and their zombie parent with their patterned fur, so aka a striped donkey. And while they are rare, they happen every once in a while when there's a love affair between a zebra and a donkey, two equine species unalike in chromosomes, in some fair zoo where we lay our scene. From ancient grudge break to new mutiny where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. Just Romeo and Juliet, but with a donkey and a zebra. That was weird. Take it. And it's not as dramatic as Romeo and Juliet, but let me have my moment here, okay? Here's your photo of something else. It's a shark horse. If this was running at you, what would you do? Let's go on to number 6, a leopon. So you've heard of a liger or a tigon, but what about this fanciful cat? It's a cross between a lioness and a leopard. This is one type of cross that's most likely happening in captivity, but not unheard of in the wild. This resulting look is a cat nearly the size of a lion with shorter legs like a leopard, and they have spots like a leopard's but are paler, more like brown instead of black, and males grow short manes, not the big luscious ones. And honestly, they look unreal and kind of fake, as if a lion was spray painted with jaguar spots and mane was given like a bit of a haircut, but super cool. And you know what else is cool? This lion cross between a lion and a guinea pig. A guinea lion. I'm trying to do an accent, I don't know what it is. I can't really imagine being afraid of it because like look at the cute face, like no. Oh, but also look at this cute one, a Squix. Just gosh darn adorable. But let's move on to number 5, Jeep, or Geep. No, I'm not talking about the car Jeep, this is spelled G-E-E-P, and I was probably right the second time saying it's a Geep. This hybrid is a chimera. In short, any Geep has 4 parents because it's the result of a combination of goat and sheep embryos. This mix of embryos is then put in the womb of a sheep or a goat until it's born. A successful Geep that was born had patches of sheepish wool and goatish hair. And whenever these are a success, they aren't able to have babies because goats and sheep have different numbers of chromosomes, as I've said before with the Zonkey. But another break from science talk, look at this, a dunny! It's so fluffy. It's amazing, it's from my wildest dreams and I want 10 of them. On to number 4, a Zo. This is spelled D-Z-O or D-Z-O. The Zo is a hybrid of a yak and a cow. And here's a yak for reference, and here's a cow for reference, and then the resulting Zo. Some people call it a yakow, which I think is great because it has a really nice ring to it, kind of like ka-chow. Anyways, a Zo has a face similar to a cow, but has larger horns, and it is larger than both of its parents. And my favorite fact, that it can survive at an altitude of over 10,000 feet. Zows have pulmonary artery pressure that's low, which means it can survive breathing in air without risking pulmonary hypertension, aka it has very low blood pressure, so the arteries have less problems. And you know what would give me less problems? Having a spowl. This beautiful fake creature, it's a spider owl. 1, it has better eyeliner than me, and 2, Is it spider-sized or owl-sized? I kind of want to know because I would take both, but for different reasons. On to number 3, a growler bear. And this blend is becoming increasingly more common, likely due to climate change. Grizzly bears moving further north into polar bear territory, and the two are mingling. One example looks like a grizzly in its face shape and its paws, but has mostly white color that polar bears are known for, because polar bears are white. And what is uncommon is the pair. This is a penguin-bear hybrid about the size of a teddy bear and probably really great at catching salmon. Yes, it's fake. Slightly more common is the bowl, an owl-bear hybrid. I said bowl, I meant bowel. An owl-bear hybrid that is super jacked but wise at the same time. Again, fake. Still adorable. On to number 2, another real one, the wholphin. A wholphin is the result of a false killer whale breeding with a bottlenose dolphin. This and this. Now, this one is a bit misleading. A false killer whale is technically a dolphin species, but it's still a staggering pairing. A wholphin is much bigger than a bottlenose dolphin and a bit darker too. This pairing has been seen in captivity as well as in the wild, and a cool story is that there's a pair of parents of a wholphin, and they were both actually in an Adam Sandler movie, 50 First Dates. So the mother of the wholphin was Punahele, and the father was Anui. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, I'm sorry, I tried. Here's another fake one, an elephant manatee, or fanatee if you will. Kind of brings snorkeling to a new level, and I can almost picture a fanatee just swinging its trunk and using it as a propeller to go forward. Kind of a funny visual. And I'll throw in another one. Here's a sharkopotamus. I already knew that a hippo could crush like a 4-foot tall person in their jaws, so like adding that kind of like, it's kind of, if that was in real life I'd be afraid of it, but thank you for that, Giparama, for providing that visual. But let's go on to number 1, scary animal hybrid. Killer bees. Now, this is a bee that was originally a hybrid of the African lowland honeybee with various other European honeybees. This cross became known as the Africanized bee. It was produced originally with the hopes of creating a bee with higher honey production, which is great intent, but instead it resulted in a more defensive bee. Victims of killer bee stings tend to receive 10 times more stings than from European honeybees, and during the original process of hybridizing, 26 swarms escaped the quarantine where they were produced in Brazil. And that was back in 1957, and the hybrid was spotted in North America by 1985 and the south of Texas by 1990. So that's real. But let's go on to something else. This is a hybrid of a ferret and a duck, so obviously a dare it, right?
Starting off this countdown, we have the rat pigs. The Salk Institute for Biological Studies in the US has been known to run a number of crossbreeding experiments. One was performed on rats and pigs. The team of scientists decided to take stem cells from rats and inject them into pig blastocysts. However, this failed, and I mean, I'm not surprised. Rats and pigs have different gestation times, and genetically they are very different. But imagine a pig that looked like a rat. Okay, that is terrifying. In our 9th spot, we had the human Z attempts. In 1967, scientists in China were working on creating a human-chimp mix. Sadly, not much information about these experiments have been disclosed to the public. But rumor has it that the experiments didn't really work. They wanted to basically create a chimp that could talk fluently in whatever language it was taught. Then in 1981, they tried this experiment again. They impregnated a female chimpanzee with human sperm. Turns out, the chimp did manage to get pregnant by it, but sadly passed away 3 months later due to complications. Coming in at number 8, we have the rat mouse. Scientists at the Salk Institute have found a way to grow the pancreatic tissue of a mouse inside of a rat. The mouse pancreas was able to grow inside of rats successfully. So they grew these new pancreases from mouse stem cells that were then placed in the bodies of the rats. And then when the pancreases were complete, they transplanted them back into the mice. Now the biggest thing about this experiment is that this technique could reverse diabetes in the mice. So they hope that one day they can grow organs inside the bodies of different animals, and then you transplant those organs into humans to cure diabetes. Of course, there's still so much work to be done on this. The last thing they want is to grow a human organ inside of an animal and then have the recipient's body reject it.
At number 7, let's take a step away from actual science for a moment and discuss something a little bit more mysterious, the cryptid known as Owlman. I was considering putting the Mothman at this spot, but we've all heard about the Mothman plenty of times before. The first reported account of this terrifying creature dates back to 1976 1986 in the village of Maunan in Cornwall. 2 young girls had encountered the beast, describing what they saw to be an almost man-sized owl with glowing red eyes. It had been seen hovering above the church tower. Since that fateful day, more and more reports began swooping in about this mysterious owl creature, and till this day we still don't know what this thing is or was. Was it just a hoax, or possibly a really big owl? Probably, but it could have been a human-owl hybrid, which was the result of some horrendous scientific experimentation. You know, that's also a probability. So now we're going to talk about another mouse-related hybrid. This time it's mice with human brains. Yeah, it turns out we actually got pretty close to making Pinky in the Brain a reality, because I think sometimes scientists just go, why not? Let's just do it. Back in 2014, scientists were able to imbue several lab mice with millions of human brain cells. The mice lived, though, after about a year. Almost every cell in their brains had been replaced by human ones. Now, my human brain automatically goes to these mice now performing complex math equations and playing checkers with the scientists, but that's not what happened. Turns out their memory just got way better. The way scientists tested this was by playing a certain noise, then they'd send a small electric shock through the mice, and the next time they played whatever that noise was, they took note of how the mice reacted, bracing for the incoming electric shock, and they were able to determine that the memory of these mice was 4 times stronger than that of a normal mouse. At number 5, we have human brain cells in monkeys. So Chinese scientists made headlines recently by successfully adding human brain cells to monkeys. This breakthrough involved injecting human stem cells to monkey embryos, leading to the creation of these kind of chimeric embryos, organisms composed of cells from these 2 different species. The goal here was to gain insight into brain development and disorders like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases by studying how the human cells integrated and interacted with the monkey brains. By looking at how the injected human cells behaved and developed in the monkey brains, they hoped to gain more insight into brain functions and diseases that could be otherwise unattainable through traditional means. But it doesn't take a genius to realize that the creation of animals, especially monkeys with human brain cells, is a pretty unnerving idea. If you've ever seen Planet of the Apes, you know how things could turn out here. Next up, we have reptilians. The presence of reptilian humanoids seeping their way into our society has been a relatively well-known conspiracy theory for years. There are some folks that are just 100% convinced that a number of celebrities and politicians and other powerful members of our society are reptilian creatures in disguise. Folks report their eyes changing briefly, showing their true lizard-like pupils below the surface of their nearly flawless human skin suits, or their smooth skin starting to morph into the scaly-like texture that reptiles are so renowned for. And where are these creatures said to come from? Some say outer space, and some say there are cabals of reptilians living in layers deep beneath the surface of the earth, organizing themselves to enact world domination on the inferior species above, which is us. And at number 3, we have cows with human milk. Back in 2011, Chinese scientists were able to genetically produce a herd of 300 cows able to produce milk that was 80% similar to that of human breast milk. It contained nutrients not found in cow milk that are essential to human beings, and they were hoping to mass produce this hybrid cow human milk, getting it on the shelves of every grocery store. Suffice to say, it never really took off. Now, I don't know how this was accomplished. I am not a scientist, surprisingly, but I do know that this is something I would never drink. This isn't the only case of cows being modified with human genes to make their milk more closer to ours. This same process was also used on goats in Argentina, and this type of milk has been tested on pigs, and apparently they were fine, but I don't know about you. I just get a little pukey at the idea of chugging down milk, even just normal milk, by the way, but genetically modified milk from a lab cow, I'll pass on that one, thank you. And like I said, I'd pass on standard milk too. I just don't think we're supposed to really be consuming the stuff in high quantities, like past infancy, but I don't know, there's a lot of debates about that. Number 2, the Loveland frog. Oh boy, do I love the Loveland frog. Yes, we're back into cryptid territory here. I can't help it. This weird and wacky creature is one of the most famous cryptids in the fine state of Ohio. This is not just one cryptid though. It's a group of 3 to 4 foot tall humanoid frog creatures. Now, the legend started gaining steam back in 1955 when a local man claimed to have seen not 1, not 2, but 3 of these froggish beings just hanging out under a bridge. He described them as being hairless, with large mouths, with no lips, and with a greenish tint to their skin. They also had a wand-like device that emitted a strange smell of almonds. In 1972, a police officer also claimed to have seen a large frog creature, saying he actually shot at one of them as it leapt across the road. So, did someone slip something into that man's drink in 1955? Was he just making it up? Did the cop in 1972 just fire at a very large lizard? Very possible. Or scientists were doing some nefarious frog experiments over there in Ohio. And knowing what I've learned about Ohio over my time spent doing this job, that would not surprise me in the slightest. Coming in at number 1 though, we have pigs with human organs. So this is something that's being continually researched. And it's actually pretty interesting and potentially very useful because the purpose of this is to create farm animals that can be harvested for important organs like human hearts and lungs, which could be life-saving for people needing replacements. Not sure if I'd want my new heart coming from a mutated pig monster, but I guess the chips are down. You gotta take what you can get. Japanese scientist Hiromatsu Nakuichi is one of the leading scientists on this project and is operating in the United States to help bring it to reality. They've been able to create hundreds of pig-human embryos, but none of them with the amount of human DNA necessary to accomplish their goals. But their research continues, and I'm confident that one day we'll be able to visit a disgusting pig person farm with fresh new organs we can choose from in order to keep ourselves alive for as long as we want. That's the future that I want. We're starting off the list with a very recently discovered 20-armed creature, officially named the Antarctic strawberry feather star. This creepy thing was found by researchers in the Antarctic Ocean. Its name makes it sound much cuter than it actually is. It's a jellyfish-looking creature, but not the majestic, glowy, like Avatar-looking jellyfish we often picture. The thing is just all tentacles. Kind of looks like the face hugger from Alien. It also has tiny claws attached to the smaller tentacles at the base. These things can reach up to 8 inches in length, which doesn't sound that big, but 8 inches of tentacle creature is a lot. They live between 215 feet to about 4,000 feet under the ocean. Next up, we have a new species of beetle with one of those overly complicated scientific names that I'm just fed up with trying to pronounce, but it's also known as the hitchhiking beetle, so that's what I'm calling it. If you ever see an ant with 2 butts, take a closer look. It could be just a deformed ant, or maybe it's got a beetle on its back. This is a recently discovered species of beetle that was found in the rainforests of Costa Rica. Scientists stumbled upon this tiny beetle in 2014. They have an interesting partnership with army ants. They live in association with them. These types of ants, the army ants, are known for their very aggressive hunting behavior in massive colonies. The hitchhiking beetle has evolved to blend in with its ant hosts. It has a flat body and a coloration that mimics the appearance of the ant's abdomen, making it hard to distinguish from the real ants. They hitch rides on their ant family, attaching themselves to the waist of the ant using their strong mandibles. This not only makes for a great mode of transportation for them, but it provides the beetles with protection as well. The ants are highly territorial and aggressive, so any potential threat is quickly dealt with. These beetles even feed on the debris inside the ant nests, including leftover food and ants' waste. In return, the beetles offer the ants a grooming service. They remove harmful mites and other parasites from the ant colony, helping to keep the ants healthy and disease-free. Next on the list is the mysterious smiling shark. A weird deep-sea shark with bulging eyes and a human-like smile was recently caught off the coast of Australia, causing a frenzy among the shark enthusiasts. The mysterious creature was reeled in by a deep-sea angler from a depth of 2,130 feet off the coast of New South Wales. It looked incredibly creepy with this unsettling smile and like rough sandpaper-like skin, became quite an internet sensation with an image of the creature being shared online. While some speculated it was a cookie cutter shark, others suggested it might be a goblin shark or a lantern shark. The angler identified it as an endeavor dogfish, a type of gulper shark. But shark experts disagreed on the species. Christopher Lowe, director of the Shark Lab at California State University, thought it might be a deep-water kidafin shark, while Dean Grubbs, a marine biologist, suspected it could be a rough-skin dogfish. Some experts believed it was indeed a gulper though, although the exact species is still uncertain.
In our 7th spot, we have the killer bees. Did you know that killer bees were accidentally created by scientists? If they're out here creating bees that threaten the ecosystem, then who's to say they won't create animals that do the same? Basically, this all started in the 1950s. A biologist was commissioned by the Brazilian government to create a species of bees that would increase honey production. But along the way, things went wrong. The biologist himself didn't have much experience with animal breeding. In the end, bees from southern Africa and local Brazilian honeybees mated, and it produced these angry killer bees. And then of course, thousands of these bees just accidentally escaped. Now, they get their name because when pissed off, they have been known to chase people down for more than a quarter mile. And on top of that, their stings are very painful. These bees are also aggressive towards other bees as well. So it puts them at risk, and now we're kinda just stuck with them. In our 6th spot today, we have the human mouse. In the late 90s, 3 doctors started doing experiments to try and create human body parts in a lab. One of these experiments involved growing a human ear on the back of a mouse. So they did this by creating an ear-shaped scaffolding and putting cells of cartilage from a cow on it. They then put the mouse under anesthetic and placed this ear under its skin. Crazily enough, the mouse's body fed the cow cartilage cells. The scaffolding dissolved and the mouse grew this artificial shape of a human ear. But it was only the outside of an ear. Okay, it didn't work, there was no eardrum. Now you might be wondering why they did this. Well, their hope is that this will help plastic surgeons when reconstructing human ears for their patients. So they would create this ear on the mouse and then graft it onto the person. So you'd have an ear that is part mouse, part cow. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the goat with human milk. I swear I didn't make this up, it's real and I'm a little disturbed. But basically, scientists have figured a way for goats to produce human breast milk. They did this by transferring human breast milk enzymes and proteins into goat embryos. In the end, they found that the milk the goats were producing wasn't 100% human, but it contained 60% of the lysosome and lactoferrin found in human milk. Now, why do they want goats producing human breast milk? Well, it could feed and save babies in need. Plus, it would have a longer shelf life. Would you try this milk? Let me know in the comments below. I've heard breast milk is pretty sweet, but I don't think I want to try it. Coming in at number 4, we have the Belgian super cow. Now, you guys know how much I love cows. And if you didn't know, then hi, my name is Lindsay and I love cows. But this thing is terrifying. It's monstrous, okay? It's super ripped and it's just massive. The Belgian super cows were created back in the 1800s when Belgian scientists and farmers mixed native cattle with shorthorn cattle. Then over the time, they would select the biggest and strongest offsprings of each variety and then breed them together. So on and so on, bam! You got a super cow, which is definitely the biggest and strongest, and I understand why they call it the super cow. Like, just look at this beast, okay? It could crush anyone. In our 3rd spot, we have the Enviro pig. So pig waste is actually pretty toxic. I mean, if you've seen the Simpsons movie, then you'd know all about it. I mean, that was a bit of an exaggeration, but still. Anyways, pig's waste contains really high levels of phosphorus. This phosphorus ends up in lakes and rivers and oceans and can cause a boom of algae. So scientists were trying to come up with a way for pigs to have less toxic waste, hence the creation of the Enviro pig. Enviro pigs are pigs with up to 65% less phosphorus in their excrements. This pig was first created in 1999 at the University of Guelph's Farm in Canada. This pig had its phytase gene attached to a piece of mouse DNA. Now it's really complicated to explain, but here's an explanation, and I quote, "The genetically altered pig was created using genetic material from a mouse and an E. coli bacterium to reduce phosphorus in the pig's feces. In the end, it made the pig excrete fewer pollutants." Moving on to number 2, we have the pig with human blood. Now you're probably noticing a trend by now. Pigs and mice are the scientists' test subjects of choice. Researchers at Mayo Clinic in Minnesota have managed to create pigs made out of human blood. So the pigs have human blood pumping through their veins. Not only that, but some of the cells in the blood merge together to create pig-human cell hybrids. Now, the reason behind this all is to allow scientists to study how viral infections can transfer from animals to humans. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Oliver the chimp. In the 1970s, there was a performing chimpanzee that received a lot of attention. His name was Oliver. Now, Oliver was really different from other chimps for a number of reasons. The main being that Oliver might have been a successful mix between a human and a chimp. Yeah, you heard me. A lot of doctors and scientists are convinced that Oliver was a human Z. It's believed that they inseminated a female chimp with male sperm, and Oliver was the offspring. Now let's take a look at the facts. Oliver didn't look like other chimps. In fact, he had a more human-like appearance. He had a flatter face than other chimpanzees, and he walked on 2 feet instead of all 4s. He also preferred human females over female chimpanzees, and he understood humans very well. So could it be that Oliver was actually half human, half chimp?
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Homo habilis. Alright, starting off this list, we have the Homo habilis, which is said to translate to meaning handyman. This is a species of humans that evolved in Africa sometime prior to 2 million years ago, so clearly quite some time ago. It is believed that Homo habilis went extinct about 1.5 million years ago. By the middle of the 20th century, it was starting to be accepted that humans first evolved in Africa from an early group of hominins known as Australopiths. Back in 1960, however, a research team in Tanzania found fossils that would sort of confirm this in a way. This fossil was one that sort of fell in the gap between Australopiths and humans as we know them. It was the discovery of Homo habilis, the first true human species to evolve. From what has been found, which is mostly fragmentary fossils, it has been determined that H. habilis seemed to have a brain that was significantly larger than Australopiths and more similar to later human species. It is believed that H. habilis behaved in a human way, like they made stone tools, which at the time was thought to be different than their previous ancestors. This is exactly part of the reason they were named handyman, but at this point in time we now know that Australopiths also made tools, but the name of H. habilis still stands and they are very important in the course of our evolution. In our number 9 spot today we have Homo antecessor. The discovery of this species starts out at a huge archaeological site in Spain called the Gran Dolina Cave. This cave has a rich history, but as relates to this list, at this site there has been found the remains of a hominin group called Homo antecessor. This discovery came in 1997, and this species is often described as having a mix of modern and quote primitive traits. It was thought that there were similarities with this species between both other species like Neanderthals, but also with Homo sapiens. This was able to be confirmed through DNA sequencing, or really a study of ancient proteins that were extracted from dental enamel of one of the fossils. They were also able to prove that this species was a closely related or sister lineage to modern humans, Neanderthals, and Denisovans, which shows that they all must have shared some common ancestor. In our number 8 spot today we have Homo naledi. Also called the Star Man, this species certainly was an interesting one as they had quite an unusual mix of features. It is said that parts of their skeletons would be indistinguishable from modern humans, but there were other parts that seemed almost quote ape-like. This species also had a brain that was only slightly larger than a chimpanzee, but they were still capable of sophisticated and more modern human-like behavior. No one is exactly sure when these guys existed or when exactly they went extinct, and it isn't quite clear where they they sit in the evolutionary tree, but some experts believed that they may have lived at the same time as H. habilis we already talked about. They believed that they probably went extinct more than 1 million years ago after being outcompeted by later species like H. erectus. There are others who don't agree with this, however, and who believed that this species lived much more recently, but then that begs the question as to how humans who looked so primitive could have survived until so recently.
Number 7, the pelican spider. The pelican spider, also known as the assassin spider, is a unique and actually ancient group of spiders that were first discovered fossilized in amber in the 1840s. We thought they had all died out, but in 1881 a living one was found. These spiders are found in various parts of the world: Australia, Madagascar, and South Africa. They are called pelican spiders because their elongated mouth parts resemble the beak of a pelican. They're super strange looking. Disgusting, really. I just kind of hate how these things look. Their mouth parts are used to hunt other spiders. Unlike most spiders that use silk to build webs for trapping prey, pelican spiders actively hunt and capture their prey. They have long, slender legs and a compact body, making them agile hunters. These things are equipped with a venomous bite, which they use to immobilize their prey. Once the prey is subdued, the pelican spider uses its long mouth part, mandibles, to feed on the captured spider, and these specialized mouth parts allow them to maintain a safe distance from their prey while feeding on them. Next up we have limnonectid. It's a fanged frog. Alright, a frog with fangs. Incredible. These little amphibians might look just like any other frog at first glance, harmless and cute, but things with fangs are not harmless, and very rarely are they cute. These things are found in the rainforests of Sulawesi in Indonesia. This frog earns its name because of the sharp curved teeth it sports in its mouth. These fangs might not be big enough to cause humans any harm, thankfully, but they're quite handy when it comes to its diet. The fanged frog is a carnivorous eater, feasting on insects, small invertebrates, and other tiny creatures. Those fangs help it to grab and hold onto its prey, making it an efficient hunter in the jungle. Another interesting thing about them, aside from the fangs, is how they reproduce. Most frogs lay eggs, but not this one. The fanged frog gives birth to live tadpoles instead of laying eggs like its other froggy counterparts. The females carry developing tadpoles in their bodies, nurturing them internally until they're ready to emerge as fully formed frogs. And at number 5 is the deuter. Once again, I'm just gonna call it the bonehouse wasp. Sick name for an awesome wasp. Bonehouse wasp sounds like a Johnny Cash song title. These badasses were discovered in southeast China in 2014. Its nickname, and even part of its fancy scientific name, Osarium, is based on the word ossuary because these wasps build their homes out of ant corpses. It also lays its eggs inside living spiders. Just ruthless. I love these things. They even look evil. Jet black with these faint grayish white stripes. They're like goth wasps. I'm glad they're the size they are though, so that we could just marvel at them without having to worry about our own physical safety. We'd be singing a much different tune if these things were even just slightly bigger, like the size of a dragonfly. That would suck. Can't imagine a sting from one of these things would be very pleasant though. Next up we have the gigantic worm eel. In 2014, scientists stumbled upon something straight out of a nightmare, the gigantic worm eel. Yes, there is a proper scientific name too, and I'm not going to be touching on it. As its nickname suggests though, these eels are massive. We're talking about a creature that can reach lengths of up to 50 inches. That's about twice the length of other worm eels. But the size isn't the only thing that makes this eel terrifying. It lives in the deep sea, specifically in the waters off the coast of West Africa. That means it dwells in the pitch black darkness where sunlight can't reach. It's adapted to survive under extreme pressure and in an environment where most living things wouldn't stand a chance. It has a long, slender body and a mouth full of sharp teeth. Just picture a giant fanged worm lurking in the darkness of the deep ocean. And to make matters worse, it's a predator, of course. But we don't know a whole lot about these things. It's incredibly difficult for scientists to study them up close. Number 3, the meat-eating sponge. So what comes to mind when you hear sea sponge? SpongeBob SquarePants obviously just flashed in front of everyone's mind right now. And actual sea sponges are, for the most part, pretty non-threatening. At least that's what we thought until recently. Again, in 2014, scientists made a discovery off the coast of California. They found not one, but 4 new species of sponges lurking near undersea volcanoes and deep sea vents. Meat-eating sponges. These sponges have a pretty ruthless way of getting their meals. They use tiny hooks to trap unsuspecting prey, mainly tiny crustaceans swimming around in the ocean. They're kind of like Venus flytraps of the sea. It's a pretty savage way to catch a meal, especially for something that most people associate with just kind of being there, not doing a whole lot. It's cool that these things live near undersea volcanoes and deep sea vents too. Just goes to show that life can thrive in the most extreme and unexpected places on Earth. Who would have thought that, like, sponges of all things could be such ruthless predators? Like, isn't the world scary enough as it is? I'm making an attempt to pronounce this one. It's just a massive sized tarantula that was discovered in Sri Lanka in 2009. A villager stumbled upon a dead spider and decided to show it to the folks at the Sri Lankan Biodiversity Education and Research Organization, and guess what? Turned out to be a new species of tarantula. Now, what makes this spider super freaky is its size. These things have a leg span of a whopping 8 inches, the size of a dinner plate. Imagine coming across a spider that huge. But it gets even worse. This tarantula isn't just big, it's also deadly. Its venom is potent enough to take down small rodents, birds, lizards, even snakes. And they look creepier than your standard tarantula, in my opinion. Anyway, they're all pale. Ugh. And finally, we have the vanilla Vader woodlouse. Just look at this thing. I know what you may be thinking. It's a bug. Looks like a common woodlouse. It's freaky looking, but at least it's small. 25% larger than typical woodlice we find on land. Luckily, they live deep below the ocean, so we don't actually have to deal with them, but still, that's big. These things were discovered just recently in 2022 in the Gulf of Mexico. It gets its Vader nickname because apparently it looks like Darth Vader's helmet, which I'm not really seeing, but I can appreciate the name. Anyway, it's something new to throw on the menu at Red Lobster, and that makes me very...
At number 10, we have Kama. So we're gonna start off with Kama. This is a cross between a camel and a llama, or Kama, you could say. And while you may be thinking, okay, this isn't too wacky, I need to remind you the stats of both parents of this creature. A llama weighs about 130 to 200 kilograms, or 300 to 450 pounds. In comparison, a dromedary or one-humped camel weighs 400 to 600 kilograms. That's 900 to 1300 pounds, which is twice the size. So now we are all thinking, how? I will tell you that this blend was done science-y through artificial means, and the biggest success story was Rama, or Rama, the Kama, or Kama, Rama the Kama, who lived to be 14 years old. And now that we've seen a Kama, let's look at another llama hybrid, the Swama. This fake one. Ah yes, majestic. I can imagine it now, flying before nosediving when it sees I have snacks. Stunning. But on to another real one at number 9, Narluga. While this one wasn't caught on camera, we do have a photo of the skull, and there have been photoshopped interpretations of a Narluga. The skull was given to researchers by an Inuit hunter that was part of a group that caught 3 of these whales during a subsistence hunt. The blend of narwhal and beluga was described as uniformly gray, with pectoral fins shaped like a beluga's and tails shaped like a narwhal's on sciencenews.org. It was confirmed through DNA analysis that the mother was a narwhal and the father was a beluga, and these have been said to not been spotted since this skull was discovered. But it is important to note that humans don't frequently visit the Arctic to whale watch for research or otherwise, so keep that in mind. And yes, I did promise it, have a funny photoshopped animal. This is a beluga horse hybrid, and again, majestic, but I'm kind of like judgy of the balance because it's kind of hard to believe it's like a bipedal animal but has no arms, so like how would the balance work? I can barely balance with my 2 arms. Imagine it's called a belugarse. You can name it for yourself if you like, but what if it falls forward? And then have another aquatic Arctic find, the penguin. This one's honestly creepy and it looks kind of like the villain in a story. So let's get back to the facts. At number 8, we have a hinny. And while you think hinny is just my bad impersonation of RuPaul, well, you're right, but it's something else as well. You may have heard of a mule, but a hinny is the other hybrid equine with similar parentage. Both a mule and a hinny are the result of breeding a horse with a donkey, but a mule has a horse as a mother and a hinny has a donkey as a mother. Let that sink in. Now, both tend to live longer than their parents and are more resistant to disease, but mules are more popular since they tend to be stronger and have better endurance. And now that I've told you about hinnies, let's look at this other fake blended creation, another equine, the horse seal. Moment of silence for how funny this one looks. It's one of my faves.
In our number 7 spot today, we have Homo erectus. As I just mentioned in the last point, we have Homo erectus, or the upright man. It is thought that this human species also evolved in Africa, this time somewhere around 2 million years ago, and they went on to quickly expand and spread throughout Eurasia. At this point in time, it is debated exactly when this species went extinct, but it is believed to be around 143,000 years ago. While this species isn't the most well known, they are extremely important to our evolution. They looked like and behaved in similar ways to us, and they were the earliest known human species to have migrated long distances, which is not only an exceptional feat, but also really important to our world today. It is believed that this might be the earliest known species who was able to learn how to control fire, and also quite possibly the first to cook their foods. This opened the way for a better diet with improved nutrition, which then paved the way for the evolution of a larger and more demanding brain. In our number 6 spot today, we have Homo neanderthalensis. We are talking about the most well-known extinct human species now, the Neanderthals. How well known they are might be contributed to the fact that they were the first ancient human species to be discovered by scientists around 200 years ago. Neanderthals were thought to have first appeared in Eurasia about 200,000 years ago, and they lived until somewhere around 40,000 years ago. It is often said that Neanderthals are like a cousin of us Homo sapiens, and that we share some sort of similar parent species with them. Despite these similarities, it isn't exactly clear when the split from the line happened between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, but some believe it may have been over 1 million years ago. Neanderthals are known for their sophisticated tools made from stone and bones, and it is thought that they might have taken advantage of fires that were caused by lightning, which showed that they were, of course, also able to control fire. It is thought that Neanderthals also practiced self-medication and that they made art, which only suggests that they might have been more cognitively advanced than people once believed. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Homo longi. This species is one of the most recently proposed hominin species, and they are thought to have originated in China. The skull that led to the discovery of this species was first found in the 1930s, but it wasn't until recently that it was made available for scientific study and analysis. The skull is thought to have come from about 146,000 years ago, and with this new information, it is thought that this skull might have brought forward a quote long lost sister lineage of Homo sapiens. The eye sockets of this skull are said to be large and blocky, the molars are much larger than ours would be, and the brow ridge is said to be quite sizable. These are all considered primitive traits, but what's not primitive is the size of the brain, which is completely comparable to modern humans. This discovery is one that just reminds us how difficult it is to designate a new species with such limited resources available in terms of evidence. At this point in time, it isn't exactly clear where they fit in on the evolutionary tree, but it certainly is quite interesting, and it reminds us how complicated human evolution really is. In our number 4 spot today, we have Homo rudolfensis. So this is a species that has very little evidence. Really just a single specimen. A skull. This specimen, also referred to as KNMER1470, is believed to have come from about 1.9 million years ago, and it was found in what was once known as Kubifora, but it is now Kenya. The skull was originally thought to be from the species H. habilis, the one we started this list with, but there were a few problems with this classification. Firstly, the brain case of the skull was quite big. H. habilis had brains around 500 cubic centimeters, but this brain case would have allowed for a brain the size of 700 cubic centimeters. This skull also had large teeth and a smaller brow ridge than what would have been seen on the skull of an H. habilis. This is exactly why experts concluded that this skull belonged to a previously unknown species, even accounting for the differences that might have been seen between males and females. That is exactly why this separate species was designated back in 1986. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Denisovans. So this is a group that was discovered in a completely different way than the other other species on this list. For most of the other species, we found fossils or remains that showed their distinct differences from other species, and these discoveries gave us very valuable insights into what their lives might have been like and around when they lived, but the discovery of these guys, we have little to no information on their skeletons, their appearance, or how they behaved, but we still know of their existence, and that's all thanks to DNA and genetics information. So basically, researchers found fragments of teeth and bones that were 50,000 years old in a cave in Siberia. Based on their age and the location they were found, everyone just assumed that the DNA extracted from them would match Neanderthals, but that did not happen. Instead, when they were tested in 2010, it was discovered that these bones belonged to a human species that is estimated to have last shared an ancestor with Neanderthals about 765,000 years ago. Right now, this species hasn't been given a scientific name, and this reluctance is due to the fact that so little is known about them. Through more research though, which is of course currently ongoing, it is thought that they might be formally recognized as a species or subspecies Homo denisova. In our number 2 spot today, we have Homo floresiensis. This species is honestly a bit of an evolutionary mystery or puzzle that is super interesting. It is believed that they lived on the Indonesian island of Flores sometime between 100,000 to 50,000 years ago, but it is also believed that ancestors of this species might have been present on the island at least 700,000 years ago. The puzzling part comes in when we talk about their appearance because it's just so different from ours. They wouldn't have stood over 3 feet tall, they had short bodies, super long feet, and a very small brain. This wouldn't have been all that strange when it came to the earliest human species like H. habilis when that species was wandering around Africa over 2 million years ago, but we are talking about a species that lives thousands of kilometers away and that was only alive 50,000 years ago. They're also thought to have behaved in a similar way to other early humans, like with the ability to control fire, cook food, that sort of thing. That is exactly why experts aren't quite sure how H. floresiensis fits into the evolutionary tree, but it is possible that they might have found themselves stranded on this island, and that is the cause for their hugely different evolutionary path. In our number 1 spot today, we have Homo luzonensis. Another island-dwelling population, this species was discovered on the island of Luzon in the Philippines, and it is thought that they lived there around 50,000 to 60,000 years ago. This species was discovered through just 13 bones from teeth, fingers, toes, and a femur that were found on the island. These remains belonged to 3 different individuals, but they gave us an incredibly valuable insight into this previously unknown species. In 2019, it was determined that these bones were different enough from the other known past human species that they were then classified into their own new species category. It is crazy to think that it's still so recently that we are discovering brand new species that are so important to the history of humans and how we got here today. It is said that the toe and finger bones of this species are quite interesting as they are slightly curved, which is a feature that is shared by living species of tree-dwelling primates. It is thought that this may suggest that for H. luzonensis, living in trees might have still been a part of their lifestyle.
And we're starting off this list with rabbit-human hybrids. Back in 2003, scientists in Shanghai successfully fused human cells with rabbit eggs in a laboratory dish. And the crazy thing was, they survived until they were disposed of and harvested for their stem cells. So it's unclear how long they could have survived and whether the thing would have actually reached past the embryo stage. We could have had a real half-person, half-rabbit monster living amongst us. They'd be about 20 years old now. Not sure why the scientists didn't try this again and actually let the thing live. Maybe it just would have been too freaky. Or maybe they did try it again and there are a whole bunch of rabbit people hiding away somewhere in China just waiting to be unleashed into the world to do God knows what. Imagine how freaky a rabbit person would be though. A mangy, almost hairless rabbit with a human-y kind of face hopping around. Human-y, that's a new word. At our number 9 spot, we have the chimpanzee. We're gonna chill in China for a little bit longer here. This apparently happened back in 1967. This story is not 100% verified, but according to 2 scientists in Shenyang, they were able to impregnate a chimpanzee with get the seed of a human, which I very much hope done artificially. They were hoping to create a more advanced form of chimpanzee that could hopefully learn to speak, and were even hoping to send it off and do experiments in space. I think the more advanced form of chimpanzee is us. I think that's what we are. But anyway, apparently the chimp did get pregnant, now carrying a human-chimp hybrid in its belly, but the creature was never born as their lab and work was destroyed by revolutionaries, and the chimp died while 3 months into its pregnancy. Not sure about this story. On one hand, this all sounds pretty far-fetched, but on the other, as I said, we do share about 98.8% of our DNA with chimps, so stranger things have happened. Number 8, mice with human livers. So this is an interesting case because I'm actually kinda on board with it. It's a great alternative to testing on chimpanzees. I shall explain. In 2010, researchers at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies in California were able to genetically modify a mouse so that it had an almost human liver. The aim of the game here was to create an animal they could test on for diseases that only humans and chimpanzees get. In the past, we've only been able to test stuff like hepatitis B and C and malaria on chimps, so being able to use mice instead, still not ideal, but it might be the best alternative. Basically, the goal is to infect these genetically modified mice with whatever disease they're testing on, and then attempt to treat them. Could make for pretty big strides in the medical field.
Next up at number 7 now, we have Goldie. This is the very creative name given to the largest pet goldfish ever. It was owned by Nick Richards from the UK and measured 15 inches long, 5 inches wide, and weighed in at 2 pounds. These may not sound like huge numbers compared to our previous animals, but remember, we're talking about a goldfish here. That is insane. This size was achieved in 2008, so it's safe to assume that Goldie is no longer with us. Couldn't really find any other stories, but I'm guessing Goldie was not flushed down a toilet. Physically impossible. Coming at number 6 now, we have Bailey Jr. Jim Sautner is a man from Canada who has a pet bison. That automatically makes it one of the world's biggest pets, but this bison, named Bailey Jr., is especially large. He weighs in at over 1,600 pounds. That's about the weight of 10 adults. Now, Jim, the owner, says that Bailey Jr. is treated like family, and that he even used to sleep in the house until he got just too big for it. I heard that when he left home, Jim said, "Bye, son." Sounded funnier in my head, actually. Next up at number 5 now, we have Medusa. That's the name of the biggest pet snake ever. In 2011, Medusa, a python, was measured at 7.67 meters. That's over 25 feet long. She was 10 years old when measured and took 15 people to hold her. She's housed in the Edge of Hell haunted house in Kansas City. I guess they were looking for a way to bring their haunted house to the next scare level, and they thought, hey, a 25-foot long snake should do it. The downside is she costs a lot to feed. Medusa will eat rabbits and hogs like they're just snacks. She's been known to eat an entire 40-pound deer in one sitting. Until I see a human do the same, I think that's pretty impressive. Next up at number 4 now, we have Big Jake. Big Jake is a massive horse. He lives in the Smoky Hollow farm in Michigan, USA, and just look at him. It's almost ridiculous. Big Jake stands at just under 83 inches. That's 6'9" from hoof to head. He's a pet, but also a workhorse on the farm. Pulling wagons is his full-time job. When it comes to diet, Big Jake eats big meals. His daily meal plan includes 1.5 bales of hay and 40 quarts of oats per day. So if any of you guys want to be just a little bit taller, now you know what to eat. At the number 3 spot now, we have Darius. Since 2012, Darius has held the record as the biggest rabbit on the planet. Just look at him. That's insane. He's part of a special breed known as continental giants, and that's not an understatement. Most of these rabbits will grow up to 4 feet long. Darius weighs in at about 50 pounds. I'm done giving you guys comparisons to humans. Let's just say that's crazy heavy for a rabbit. He's held the record for years, but it looks like he might be beaten by another giant rabbit, his own son, who is called Jeff. Yes, Jeff looks set to overtake his dad when he is fully grown, but at least the record will stay in the family. That's kind of cute. Next up at number 2 now, we have Hercules. Named after the Greek demigod, Hercules is a liger, a hybrid offspring of a male lion and a female tiger. Ligers are very rare and always bigger than either of their parents, but Hercules is just something else. He is the world's largest living cat, weighing in at 922 pounds. He is 10'9" in length and 49 inches tall at the shoulder. He lives a happy life at the Institute of Greatly Endangered and Rare Species, unaware of just how massive massive he really is. And finally at number 1 now we have Omar. We started with the heaviest cat, so let's finish with the longest one. Omar is a crazy 3 foot 9 inches in length. He's from Australia and is an inch longer than the world's official longest cat. The owner is just waiting for confirmation. Omar was discovered by the wider world after a video of him went viral in 2017. His owner made an Instagram account for him, of course, and that got 17,000 followers in just 2 weeks. Owner Steffi Hurst said he takes up too much room on the bed and he demands we cuddle and pet him all through the night. I guess you could say he longs for them.